If I could just take a minute to talk to you about some of the money that's being allocated for Department of Defense projects. What you're finding is that those projects are being allocated through the Department of Defense website. In order to participate in those programs, you're going to need to get something called a control number. In the last allocation of funds through something called ARPA-E, which is the energy portion of DARPA that has money for research and development, through that program you have to apply for a control number at least a week in advance of the due date of the application. In the last ARPA-E program, a number of potential applicants were frustrated because they failed to apply for the control number in advance, and so they were excluded from the program. This became particularly galling when the software system at DOE actually crashed and failed, and so they had to extend the deadline for application of the program, and yet they did not extend the deadline for anybody who had not applied for the control numbers in advance. The ARRA also has bond and loan programs, and the theory behind these programs is that what the government is going to do is they're going to take their capital, enter into public and private partnerships, and then they're going to be able to increase the amount of spending on renewable energy investment. The first big program is something referred to in the industry as CREBS. $1.6 billion of new clean energy renewable bonds was allocated to finance wind, closed-loop biomass, open-loop biomass, geothermal, small irrigation, hydropower, landfill gas, marine renewable, and trash combustion facilities. When you compare the bond and loan programs to the grant programs, you're going to see that the types of technologies that are included within those programs are different. So for example, you're not seeing a lot of grant programs for hydro or tax credits for hydro, but you are seeing loan programs to cause hydro to grow. In addition, with respect to trash combustion facilities, you're seeing funding for trash combustion facilities under the bond and loan programs, but you don't see the correlative tax credit programs or grant programs for those types of technologies. 1/3 of the funding authorized is supposed to be used for qualifying projects for state, local, and tribal governments, 1/3 for power providers, and 1/3 for electric cooperatives. $6 billion in temporary loan guarantee programs was established for renewable energy power generation and transmission projects that begin construction by September 30th of 2011. Up to $500 million of the overall $6 billion can be used for the development of leading-edge biofuels that have been demonstrated to have commercial promise to substantially reduce greenhouse gases. And they're expected to create over $60 billion in private funding. Again, an important thing to consider about these programs is that all of these programs are time limited. The purpose of the ARRA was to get lots of money into the community quickly, and so all of these projects have to start construction by 2011. You'll see that those dates correlate pretty well with the dates for the tax credits, the investment tax credit as well. With respect to some of the funding that the federal government allocated for renewable energy, a lot of the funding actually went to something called the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, or NYSERDA. NYSERDA is a public body that was established many years ago as the result of deregulation. And for years, NYSERDA existed and spent money that was funded by something called the Systems Benefit Charge. The Systems Benefit Charge is on everybody's electric bill within NYSERDA's territory. So some utilities like LIPA on Long Island and Con Ed, for some purposes, don't actually participate to the same extent as other utilities. But for the most part, NYSERDA covers all of New York State. Conceptually for me, it's easier for me to think of NYSERDA funding streams when I think of how to obtain money from NYSERDA. So you have the Systems Benefit Charge that I discussed. A number of years ago, there was another funding stream that was established called the Renewable Portfolio Standard. For that program, the legislature allocated money for renewable energy facilities to be built. NYSERDA takes that funding stream and it allocates it through a Dutch auction in which renewable energy companies will bid into the auction to sell something called renewable energy certificates, or RECs. $100 million or so has been allocated for this program this year, and based on sort of the rumors that you hear in the industry, it looks like that auction program will be run in September of this year. There's also Renewable Greenhouse Gas Initiative funds. Those funds are the proceeds of the carbon cap and trade auction that is run by the RGGI, Renewable Greenhouse Gas Initiative states. The RGGI states are running a Northeast, generally down through Maryland, regional auction to have power companies are obligated to purchase carbon credits if they exceed a certain amount of emissions of carbon. The proceeds of that auction are to be used for renewable energy and energy efficiency. NYSERDA went through an extensive planning process to determine how the proceeds of that auction should be spent, and came out with a plan. Unfortunately, in the interim, there was a lawsuit by one of the utilities, so at this point it's uncertain as to whether NYSERDA will be spending that money or not. The last pool of funding is the funding under the ARRA, and that falls really into three buckets: the State Energy Plan, block grant funding, and Energy Star, and I'll discuss each of those in series. So there was $123 million allocated to fund the State Energy Plan, and that means funding to increase the energy efficiency and reduce energy costs and consumption for consumers and businesses and government, reduce reliance on imported energy, and improve the reliability of electricity and fuel supply and the delivery of energy services, and reduce the impacts of energy production and use on the environment. More specifically, the activities that are supposed to be carried out as pursuant to the State Energy Plan, the funds are awarded based on the following criteria, and that is the number of jobs that are created, the energy saved, the renewable energy installed capacity and generation, the greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions that are reduced, the energy cost savings, and the ability to leverage these funds. Funds are going to be made available through a competitive bid program through NYSERDA, and you'll see a link on the PowerPoint that shows you where to go to access more information on this program. NYSERDA also received $175 million or so in energy efficiency and conservation block grants. Of those, 17 million are to be allocated to small municipalities, 11 million to all municipalities, and 23 million to 10 of the largest counties. $121 million of that program is being allocated to 44 of the largest cities and towns. Under this program, NYSERDA is soliciting applications for projects from small municipalities following DOE's approval of its plan. Under this program, although the funds are allocated by formula, there is an application process to DOE. That application process is ending next week. What we're finding in indications from the individual who runs this program for DOE is that they're looking very hard at the issue of leverage in awarding these grants. So to the extent that you can take these dollars and stretch them with public-private partnerships or other financing schemes, I think that you're probably going to find you'll have a better time going through the DOE process.